we can just switch over and get started right away. Hey, Cornelius.
Hello,
How's it going? Good.
I'm good.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you. How are you?
good. So I guess we can start it with a little bit of introduction to yourself, probably also a proper pronunciation of your last name in your mother tongue. But
Yeah.
then yeah, who you are and what you do, and then we can get going from there.
Yeah, so my name is Cornelius Dämmrich. I'm 31 years old, I think. Yes, that's my age.
Right.
And I'm currently living in Germany. I always lived in Germany. I never lived outside of Germany. So, yeah, in Cologne. And I'm a 3D artist. And I'm doing this digital art thing for 70 no, it's not 70, 17 years now.
Hmm.
70 years, what a little bit weird. Yeah. 17 years now. I think I hit 17 years in November, actually. So I started back in 2003 with like a little experiments in Photoshop, and I've been doing that since then.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I think most people who are coming by are very familiar with your work and what you do now. Um, I'm curious. The first thing that I saw you post as was like Zomax. Was like there was like always Zomax, and I'm curious what that origin is for that naming. And like it was
That's
kind of like mixed in, and then it like went away because everyone switched back to just their full names for like to get their names out there. So where did that come from, and why did that start?
okay, that's just super weird. So there's like a musician. His name is Jackson and his computer band, and he has a song that's called "Oh Boy." And it's like there's like a little girl telling a tale to some electronic beats and stuff like that, and it's
Hmm.
just like, and at some point she tells a story about a special project that's called Zombax or
Mm.
Zobax or something like that. And then for years and years, this was my favorite song, and I listened to it, and I always heard Zomax, not Zombax. And I could never find lyrics online because it's just like an electronic musician, right?
Right.
And they usually don't have lyrics. And in this case, I never found anything into it. And then I just listened to it and heard, okay, Zomax, that's a cool name. And there was also this. Do you know Beefy? It's like
Mm-mm.
a Slim Jim in Germany.
Okay. Yeah.
We have like these like mini salami things you can eat and buy on truck stops and stuff like that. And they are called Beefy, and um, they had like a TV ad and with a fictional company that and they built like these fishes that can sing. You know, you can put them on the wall and you
Right.
press a
Yeah.
button and it sings to you. It's like this trash stuff,
Hmm.
and they produced that. And this fictional company was also called Zomtech, which is like often my username in games and
Hmm.
or on Steam, I think. And this was like a perfect fit for me because well, on the one side I had this song I really liked, and I misheard the lyrics from, and then I had this funny TV commercial, and then I combined both of them and it was like Zomtech, Zomax, and yeah. But yeah, it's gone now.
Yeah.
I always introduce myself with Cornelius now.
Yeah.
And
It's
I'm still having these email addresses, like my business
mm,
email is at zomax.net, and but yeah, I have to switch that over at some point.
yeah,
I
I
didn't
think
find the time.
everyone's kind of had that thing, and I was always uncertain like when I first started posting stuff if I should like go under a cool pseudonym, because like for a long time on the internet you shouldn't have shared your full name, and that was like the norm, and you had like a pen name of sorts or just a username. But then
Yeah,
everyone was like, "Oh, well, then no one knows who like I am when I share my art, and like for business stuff I should probably have like my name attached to all of this unless I'm like a
yeah.
studio."
Also, you get older, right? And
Yeah.
like when I started this whole thing, my username in the internet everywhere was Eimer, which is like the German word for bucket. It's just like bucket.
Yeah.
It was like super dumb, but I was like 15 years old,
Mm-hmm.
right? And didn't care.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I think
but that's gone now too.
yeah, it's also a weird crossover from like video game stuff where you definitely put not your full name in all
No.
of those titles, and so yeah, you like if you carry over that to other stuff, it's like whatever you picked at like 12 and 15 is like what you carry on into other things, which probably not the most professional usernames to be using everywhere.
Even in video games, I picked up Skyrim again a few
Mm,
days ago, and even there I called myself Cornelius. These days, it's just like I don't
yeah,
know. Also, there's like Cyberpunk coming out, and I bet I will name the character also Cornelius.
right. Yeah, I did
Yeah,
that. There was a thing for the most recent Call of Duty Black Ops where it's like you could like put your name in, and it was like inside the campaign, like it called you
yeah,
that, and I was like, oh, this is weird, like I normally don't put my name into these sort of things, but I guess it's cool. Yeah, if
yeah.
Cyberpunk comes out, I don't know if that's gonna happen again because that's in like 5 days, maybe.
Yes,
We'll
yes. I
see.
think they can't postpone it now
Because what
because
is this, this is the
I heard.
fourth.
Yeah, yeah, and also it's like the Christmas
Mm-hmm.
stuff, and they would lose so many sales. And
Right.
also, I think some people, like special people, already had have the box version now, and you
Oh, right.
can start preloading today or tomorrow. I don't know, but you can already get the data. So I don't think that they can, yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I was
postpone it again.
heartbroken that Halo got pushed out. I was really looking forward for that for
What was
December.
that? Halo Infinite? Is it that one, or is it? I
Yeah,
don't. I never. I played Halo 1, the very first Halo I played, and after that I never played Halo again. So,
yeah, yeah, it's kind
is
of
it the
a
new one?
yeah, it's an infinite. It's like a return actually to sort of the world of like Halo One, like combat evolved stuff. And I was like, I think everyone was very excited, and then they just like released a demo of it, and everyone like really got mad at them about how bad it looked, and then they just like immediately pushed it off into next year. And I was like, oh well, I would have liked to play
Hmm.
that. Um,
Yeah.
Back to what everyone probably is here to talk about and see, not video games, but uh,
Let's just talk about
yeah,
video games. All
they'll just
right.
everyone will be along for the ride. Um, I think that it would be interesting to kind of hear how you got started doing kind of the stuff that you are. I feel like every person has a little bit of a different track or path that they follow. So it's like, did you go to school for this? You self-taught? Like, did it merge? I know you said it's like Photoshop stuff you started kind of tinkering in, and then like how did that lead you into like what you're known for of like huge, massive photoreal, big still life scenes and like that sort of thing.
Okay. So,
Yeah, big question, but
yes. So I started in 2003, November 2003, I was on a LAN party,
mm,
where everyone
yep,
brings their PC and then you sit together and play them games. And one of these guys who was also on the LAN party had like a pirated version of Photoshop 7.0.
mm,
And I got that and I spent like half the LAN party clicking around in Photoshop.
yep,
It was like super intriguing and fun, and people got mad because I didn't want to play Warcraft 3, but want to play Photoshop. And yeah, that from there on, I think I yeah used it to I was active in a lot of online forums, and there were like people having like these services that they create avatar icons and
mm,
signature images for the forum users, right? And
right,
so I did the same thing, not for money or anything. I just for practice, and I did this for at least 1.5 years, like just doing like these tiny little icons and making them custom for the people and putting their names in there and stuff like that. And then I was introduced by a friend to this interface design scene, and they pretty much did. Do you know Winamp?
mm-hmm,
It's like a software. It's like a music player software.
yeah,
Back in the days, it was really popular. And what I did there was that I created these skins for Winamp, but they
right,
never got like into made into these skins that actually work. I just like prototyped them.
yeah,
So they looked really like super 3D, but it wasn't 3D. It was just like a Photoshop with effects and stuff, and
mm-hmm,
like highlights painted on them, and I did this for years, pretty much. Also made like a little bit of web design then, and um, yeah, and then I think 1 or 2 years after that, I started, um, got my hands on the first C4D version. It was C48.5, and then I just played around with that. Was really, really bad at this, and pretty much just used Q because there also wasn't like YouTube around back
Right.
then, or it wasn't really popular. You couldn't like watch tutorials on
There was no
anything, and
grayscale gorilla for you to follow and
no,
just be like,
no,
oh, this
no.
is how you do it.
It was, um, I think the manual for Cinema 4D wasn't integrated in the program at this point, so
Oh,
you
the way
had
you could
like,
like click help and it would like go to a
yeah, yeah,
page. Yeah. No.
no, that didn't work. And it also was a pirated version, right?
Right.
So I just tried what was try and error pretty
Mm-hmm.
much, and then yeah, I think then it just got better, just like pushed through it and tried again and tried again. And in the beginning, it was like just using cubes and building like cities with cubes that I was were scaled differently, and it was just so shitty. Really, it was the it look everything looked crap. And we had like little contest in school because I had like
Mm.
my close friends were also like a little bit well, nerdy and were interested in programming and computer graphics, and they tried building skyscrapers. We had like little contests who could build the coolest skyscraper, and yeah, I lost that. But everyone else was like not interested after a few weeks anymore, and I kept doing it, and then I had like little breaks, and then I did 2D again, like Photoshop, and then I combined everything at some point and got better and better and better, and yeah, now I'm here. And
So you never went to like a
oh yes,
university for it?
yeah. So I went to college and studied communication and design, but
Okay.
that was never attached. So
Yeah, it's
I
just a.
started 3D before I
Mm-hmm.
did this college thing, and I also had like I went to after my high school, I went to a special school that trained me in using like Illustrator,
Mm.
InDesign, and Premiere and After Effects and stuff like that. But it was not like that this was my first introduction to the whole topic. So I
Right.
knew my ways around this way before that. And yeah, so the basics are all self-taught, but what came
Mm-hmm.
after that, also like, I don't know if I can call it self-taught because usually uh, for many 3D things I know, and I asked people if they have any idea how to achieve that. For example, Raphael, you had on
Right.
last time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he told me so many things about Cinema 4D, and he was like, "Yeah, you have to do this, and did you know that you can do it that way?" And it was like this is always like mind blowing talking about this stuff with him, and I learned a lot. And also, he introduced me to Octane.
Oh.
Before that, I used V-Ray,
Mm-hmm.
like he did as well for years, and then he slowly migrated his like whole pipeline to Octane. And at some point, he showed it to me over Skype and was like, "Look how fast it is." And I was like, "What?"
Yeah. It
Yeah,
can
and
you can just see it. You can just see it in that
yeah,
other
it's like
window. Yeah.
instant result, and it was like if you used V-Ray before that with all the buckets, and then
Right.
was prep time, and it was like and I mean I made like 5 or 6 really big projects with V-Ray, but still it was so mind blowing, and I had like a GTX 960
Mm-hmm.
back then for like almost a year. It was like the first card the after I had like AMD cards for a long time,
Mm-hmm.
and it was super slow, but it was still faster than V-Ray back then, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. I
it
mean,
was
like
super cool.
the idea of like an IPR like was very like non-existent. I remember like physical render had like a weird like grainy bucket mode where it's like it was like low res and you could kind of like through you squinted you could like sort of tell what it was gonna look like, but it
Yeah,
was nowhere near like the IPR that Octane had when I first opened it, and I was like, oh my gosh,
yeah,
I can
and
tweak.
even I mean, you couldn't like you still have this limitation with VRAM, right? I can't
Mm-hmm.
just like throw polys and textures, 8K textures on it and hope it will render. But it's still if that the fact that you are so limited, I still use it even though I could like make much bigger scenes with Arnold, for example, or
Right.
anything, but just because it's so fast. And I also like the node system from
Mm-hmm.
Octane. I mean, it's super hacky in a way, and but still, I don't know. I'm just so used to it now. It feels great
Yeah, I
for
mean,
me.
I always think it's like Octane was like my first love in like the GPU rendering world, and like I still feel very like at home when I go in there and like do stuff, even when it changes. But I mean, there's just a lot of stuff where like there was the big thing and switch to Redshift, which is like great and
Yeah,
like using it in production and stuff. It's just like I feel very like in tune just because I spent the most time in Octane, and that's kind of when people are like, why do you use one? Why do you use the other? It's just like they all do essentially the same thing at this point. It's just
yeah,
up to whatever you're comfortable in. But back in the day when Octane came on the scene, it was like very much a ground shifting thing where it's like, I mean, things were before it a little bit, but they were not nearly at the like integration and level into cinema as it was when it came on the scene. So that's kind of just
yeah,
where you started with that and then just stayed because it's you got we all learned the kinks of like learning with Octane of like, oh, you can't do this, but you have to hit this button and like this thing. But like once
yeah.
you learned them, it was like easy and you were kind of like, in the flow of
Also, it
like,
was yeah the like coming from V-Ray, I had like so my mindset was okay, learning a new render engine will take at least half a year. Like
mm-hmm,
because V-Ray you had like DMC sampler and you had to wrap your mind around how
right.
this whole anti-aliasing and sampling stuff works because it's a biased engine, right? You can set
Mm-hmm,
fine tune everything and it's so mind blowing. There was always the possibility that you can set V-Ray to like a brute force mode with like, do you have like two kernels, right? So the
mm-hmm,
pre-pass kernel and the rendering kernel, it was like, yeah, light cache or irradiance cache.
yeah.
And I think it's the same thing with Redshift
Yeah,
even
they're very
because,
similar in that
yeah,
fact where you
yeah,
can fine tune like, where you want to take, power out, where you want to put it in. But Octane was
yeah,
sort of just like, you
yeah.
got two sliders.
Fire
That's
and
what it
forget.
does.
It
Yeah.
was just like, okay, it's brute force. Everything is brute force. You won't have to deal with anti-aliasing and anything at all. Just press the button and it will render as long as it needs.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I was really skeptical. How? Why? And it was super easy to learn, right? It was like through all the settings in one day. It just explained. I can explain it to you in like 15 to 20 minutes, and then you have to like try it a few times, and that's
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah, the only weird thing I think that I like, because I also was like, I didn't do V-Ray because I couldn't get a crack and I couldn't afford it. So I was just like,
Yeah,
oh, I guess I'm just not using V-Ray as a student.
yeah,
But the physical was sort of the same mentality of like there are 1,000 buttons you have to remember to like kind of flip on to like launch your render and like hope it looks right and like things to avoid. Whereas Octane was, yeah, I think the weirdest part of Octane in the beginning was just remembering like their materials because it was like split into three things and that was like unfamiliar because like I was used to kind of more of a universal everybody in one, and then you had to like mix things to like get specular to metal and stuff, and like that was like the weirdest kind of I think learning part. Everything else was like, oh cool, I just like set things high and they look better and I just
yeah,
let it go like overnight and then I have a cool image. And I think that was like what brought a lot of people over was just the appeal of how good the images looked without like very minimal amount of tweaking on like any render
yeah.
settings.
Octane has like a really great out of the box look. I mean, the first things I did was just like putting spheres on planes using HDR images and then playing around with subsurface scattering,
Mm-hmm.
like making like waxy spheres and or whatever, and just like turning the HDR around the scene
Yeah.
and seeing the instant feedback. It was so much fun. And it was just like playing with this slider, right? And
Right.
I was like, oh, it's so cool.
Yeah, there's just like those moments in 3D which is like, I don't know, I always chase this like childlike wonder of like just playing
Oh
with your
yes.
imagination where you're just like, once I can just like push all of this software out of the way and just like get into like, oh whoa, it looks like way cooler, and like moving a camera around a scene, like that's where like I like
Yeah.
that. But then on the back end there's always like, 1,000 sliders and things you have to like get familiar with before you can kind of like get to like
at,
the, oh,
at
I'm just
some
playing around.
at some point in the beginning, so when I picked up Cinema 4D for the very first time, it was like super confusing, and I couldn't like move the camera
Mm-hmm.
right. And but if you get used to it and forget it somehow, it's more, it becomes like a language.
Yeah.
So you don't think about speaking English, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
I don't think about speaking German. I just do it. And it's the same thing with Cinema 4D for me these days. So I just can use it without thinking about, okay, I need to do this and make the software do a trick, or I don't know. It's just,
Yeah.
I mean, there are certain situations where I still have to do that, but like in general, in daily use, I don't have that anymore. And then it starts to feel more like playing, and like, and it's, you described like it like as like childlike playing, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like if you're in a sandbox. And
Yeah.
I mean, I always remember when I tried like dynamics for the first time, like you have like cubes falling down on whatever, and it was like, oh man, let's build a ramp and then
Yep.
build another ramp, and then you have like this whole thing that goes on for like a minute, and you're
Mm-hmm.
like, it's just so crazy and so cool that you can do that with software, and it was
Right.
so mind-blowing back in the day.
Yeah, without like, I mean, yeah, it's like I remember, yeah, building a lot of Rube Goldberg-esque machines
Yeah,
where I was just
that's
like,
the name.
just
Yeah,
like dynamics going around, and it's like there's no cost to it. I mean, there's time, which is like
yeah,
cost, but there's no like materials where it's like I compare that to like my wife who does like fashion design, and it's like if she wants to start a personal project, it's like, buying fabrics, like all this like time invested in like physical real things where I'm like, if I
yeah,
can find some free models or something, like I can literally just get going with anything and kind of build it out. And that's kind of always where I've like kind of, I think that's why I landed on 3D. I was like, oh, I can like literally, imagine anything, and like if I just have enough time, I could like make it. And then,
yeah.
just
Create,
learning.
you can pretty much create everything from nothing. You have like a
Yeah.
blank piece of paper. You don't need any textures. If you, I mean, it helps, but you
Right.
don't need, you can model everything yourself. You can create every texture yourself, and then press a button, wait a bit, and then it looks like another world, and you are god of this world, and it's,
Yeah. And
yeah,
I think that's the point where like Photoshop, I was like, I kind of have to rely on like finding images to like manipulate. And then I got into After Effects. I was like, if I want like effects, I have to find some 3D asset that like has been already rendered for me. And I was like, why don't I just go like, what is like the end source of like all creation? I was like, oh, if I just have like 3D under my
yeah,
belt, I can like work backwards in this like pipeline. I could take my 3D into Photoshop. I could take it into, VFX and that sort of thing. And then a whole can of worms open up from 3D where it's like, cinema to ZBrush and all the other myriad of things where you just like,
yeah.
it's a infinite rabbit hole of like, I'll learn that at some point, but
Yes,
only when
yes.
my project needs it. So I think that's a kind of good segue of like that childlike wonder. It's like that's probably where you got started with your big personal projects of like these nice still lifes. Is that just something where you were like, you got inspired and wanted to like create something that was in your head and sort of like just go with your imagination? Is or like where did that kind of idea of like, oh, I'll spend like a decent amount of time, like a big chunk longer than most people do, on like their sort of things, and like make this huge like very photorealistic, very detailed scenes?
So back in the day, I never saw C4D or 3D in general as like a thing that I can do alone, like just use Cinema 4D to make a whole image. It was just always a combination of using tons of Photoshop and like painting stuff in Photoshop and then
Mm-hmm.
combining it with like a few 3D assets. And that was fun and all, but also like the style that came out of it wasn't like the, I always like these hyper-realism things and making look glass super realistic with the
Mm-hmm.
refractions and everything. I was always into that, and that never was like an option when I worked like that.
Right.
And then I I'm back in the day that was also I was only on German forums, and I mean the scene in Germany, the 3D scene isn't that big,
Mm-hmm.
so it sure got bigger. But back in the day, I was like the only person I knew who was doing 3D besides me was Raphael,
Right.
I think, and then I yeah just learned English through TV shows and got to uh, like forms like CG Talk back in the days.
Right.
And there were like really crazy good 3D artists like Marek Denko, for example, was like one of the big inspirations back in the day, and also 3D artist called Tony Bratincevic from Croatia. He's working at Blizzard right now, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah, for years I think, and they both were like these guys that create super big images with like tons of details, and I was always thinking, okay, they must use some kind of cheat or trick, or they have a software I don't know about.
Mm.
And this was always this thing, it was this lingering thing about me. It was like, okay, I have to find out what software they use, and then I can do that. It
Yeah.
can't be that hard. It won't take like months of work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they all cook with water. And
Yeah.
but I slowly started introducing more effort and time into my projects. Back then, I took just I know I one image took just 1 or 2 days, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I started like introducing more and more effort and time and putting more into every project, and then it became like 1 week, then 2 weeks, then a month, and it ended up, I think the longest was 10 months or something like that. And then through that process, I discovered, I mean, that process took me years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I discovered, okay, there's actually no trick. There never was any dirty trick or cheat,
Yeah.
or, I mean, you can make like shortcuts, but that's like minor things. And the biggest thing I took away from that was, okay, just if it looks great, it's probably a lot of effort, a lot of work, and you have to power through that, and
Mm-hmm.
nobody's forcing you to do it. You can take breaks whenever you want. You don't need to finish this. It's a personal project. There's no deadline. You can finish everything in 2 years. I mean, Marek Denko, for example, he always writes on his website, oh, this image took me 2 years. And I was like, what? 2 years? But he's probably, I mean, he has children. He's
Yeah.
probably not spending 2 years, 8 hours every day on a
Mm-hmm.
single picture. It's just crazy. So it's like over the course of 2 years, he's working on that. And I mean, right now I'm working on a new project, a really big one. I think it's the biggest one yet. I always say that, but it's true. And I didn't touch it in 3 months. So I had like other projects in between, and I didn't feel like it. And I will pick it up in January, I think. And yeah, and I just do that whenever I feel like working on it. I will work on it, and if I don't, I stop working on it. And I don't let like I try to not like let people or the internet or anything pressure me into creating more. Or
Mm-hmm.
I mean, also I mean I'm just going away from your
No, it's fine.
initial
Yeah.
question, but also what I enjoy these days is like smaller projects. I never thought I would say that, but like
Hmm.
I recently finished a smaller project, or these I made these images with syringes and
Yeah.
pencils and stuff like that. It was super fun. It was 2 or 3 weeks of work, and then it's done. And
Yeah.
you can just do it in between, and it's
Mm-hmm.
super. I mean, it's just playing around, right? And it's not like a crazy idea. It's a pile of syringes. I mean, it's not curing cancer, right?
Yeah.
But it's
Yeah,
it's
I mean, I think that those are
funny.
nice breaks, even mentally. I mean, I haven't done any like massive, 10-month long project, but I even know like when I do something for like, even a month of like just staying on one thing, you're like, there's certain peaks where you're like, you're just modeling stuff and you're like, ugh, there's like nothing to show for this. Like, I just have like, these assets that I'm like prepping, and you're like, I just need to like get the little fix of like finishing something up really quick and like being able to like see like a finished product because I've been like in the trenches here for a little bit too long. And I think that's always my biggest thing is like halfway through when it's like into the most mundane, like unwrapping something, I'm just like, I need to see something finished like within like 2 days or something so that I can like
Yeah.
take one of these assets and maybe and like take it all the way. And I mean, me and my friend Aaron Kovrat, who we both follow, also kind of does that thing where he'll take one route of the project like almost all the way down to like totally final, and then like that just helps like clear up that like it will work, but then also give him something that he can show for like early on to like keep the motivation going, because that's like kind of
Yeah.
one of the biggest
I
things.
post work in progress. Like when I finished like modeling, I make a screenshot of the mesh and post it on
Mm.
Twitter. So I have like interaction with people, and they say, "Oh, that's a good mesh," and I was like,
Yeah,
"Oh yes,
yeah.
thank you."
It's so
Because
good.
I need the validation a little
Right.
bit that I just spent 3 days on a freaking, I
Yeah.
don't know, multi-socket thing. I was like, yes, you
Yeah.
did a good job. And I was like, yeah, thank you. I need to hear that from time
Yeah.
to time.
Yeah, we like
Yeah.
to pretend that it's not for Instagram or Twitter or stuff, but it's always nice to get that little bit of like, I wonder
Yeah,
what people
sure.
think of this when it like goes out and that sort of thing in the back of your head when you're creating pieces.
I mean, you have to, I think, I mean, I'm not perfect. I have my problems with that too, but I think the best thing is to have like a middleweight, to not
Right.
like go super crazy about Instagram and Twitter, and I still have to learn that. But it's of course it's nice when people tell you, "Hey, this is a good thing you did there."
Um
Uh, Thumbs up to you.
yeah. On that, a lot of people on the Instagram questions were just always curious about like how you balance sort of your like work like for clients and stuff alongside these like long personal projects that you've been doing. And I think that you've mentioned before that you sort of like worked a deal of like part-time so that you're able to like devote some time of your
Yes.
week to personal stuff or whatever you want, and then the other time to like your client stuff. So when did you kind of find that that was like the better balance, or were you like always sort of doing this like part-time split?
So I'm still not sure that no. So I was like most of my time professionally, I was a freelancer,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm really bad at business. So I'm not a business guy. I have like really bad anxiety for the IRS, the
Yep.
German IRS, and I'm like super. I freak out whenever they write me or I have to deal with them, and because I'm afraid that I have fucked something up
Yep.
and then I end up in jail or something like that.
Yeah.
So I actually was like in therapy because of
Mm.
that. And I was like, because I have like an anxiety disorder, and this in combination with the IRS stuff is just like not good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was freelancer, but really bad at business and just getting by, just getting barely enough money to buy food and pay rent. And I did this for years, and I don't know, but I think 3D artists in Germany, we talked about that they are really paid bad.
Mm-hmm.
3D art in Germany, you can't make a fortune with that. I think if you live in LA, I don't know, but cost of living in LA is probably also really high. But in general, 3D and Germany doesn't mix well.
Yep.
And so at some point, I thought about getting the Scumroad thing started, and it worked for a bit, but then yeah, it got bad too. And then I thought, okay, it would be maybe a good idea to find a part-time job. So I can do like client work in a company, and it's the company I work at now. It's Elastic. It's a
Mm-hmm.
German. Uh, yeah, it's what what were we doing at Elastic? We do like um, not branding, but we do like yeah, interaction stuff with like real-time 3D, like
Okay.
making apps with AR and VR and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I work 3 times a day, three 3 days a week,
Yep.
and the rest of the week I spend on my own projects pretty much. So it's like yeah, a mix between a gold mix, but I'm not sure if it's perfect for
Mm-hmm.
me yet. I'm not sure if I found that this is like the right mix of doing that and doing that. Ideally, I would just do my own work
Right.
like 7 days a week, but I mean, that's the dream of everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's every artist's dream, just make your own art and make a living from it. And I'm, yeah, I'm trying to find ways to do that, but we will see
Yeah,
in the
yeah. I
future.
think it's everyone's dream to kind of have that
Yeah,
like back in the Renaissance ages, just like a patron of like some massive money that just like dumps
yeah,
money for you to like. I mean, they spent like years on something, and then that was like just how they lived, and like true artist, where it's like that's the thing, and you don't have to like worry about companies or things like that.
yeah.
Um, Another one kind of along that is people are kind of also curious about like what's the most important skill you've kind of um, picked up like at the level that you are at now that you think is like kind of helped you the most, or is it sort of just like kind of being a generalist along all of that and like picking up everything that you can and learning as much as you can as you go along so that you can tackle more things in your project and understand more of like the process.
Okay, so if you want to work with clients, I think communication is the biggest one. So that just can talk to people
Mm-hmm.
and you're open. And if you're like super shy and you hate like picking up the phone,
Yep.
which I do, I hate that. And that's not good for business. I
Right.
mean, if you despise every minute you spend on the phone, it's not going to get great for you as a business person and making a living from that. I mean, you can find your ways around these things and write more email or I don't know, but or get used to it. But I think if you're like an open communicative person, that is always a good thing if you want to interact with clients and people and talk to them. Um, in terms of 3D alone, I think what many people refuse to learn these days is modeling, actually.
Mm.
Many, I think like from five 3D artists I meet, only one of them can model properly, like poly
Right.
model. And I think it's a super healthy thing to be able to do in terms of 3D. You can clearly avoid that too. And I mean, yeah, you can just like cheat a little bit when it comes to that, but it helps a lot if you're able to do that. Also, what else? Yeah, knowing a little bit of everything is also helping, like knowing how to texture, knowing that more than one software is also good. Like if you know how to use Marvelous Designer, for example,
Mm-hmm.
or Substance Painter or
Yep.
Substance Designer. Substance Painter and Substance Designer are so freaking great at what they do, and it's just if just learn them. It's just like it's. I would advise everyone to just learn a different software, just not one software, because it's like all these softwares they're pretty much one trick ponies, except like Houdini, which is like a completely different thing. But if you want to have good textures in your 3D art, just learn Substance Painter. If you want the best cloth animation, just learn Houdini or Marvelous Designer. If you want to sculpt, use Blender or ZBrush. And yeah, I mean, there's no way around that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can also use the sculpting tools in Cinema 4D, but I
Yeah.
mean, yeah.
That's about yeah, you can. I mean, I
Yeah,
think that, everyone. Yeah, I mean, if you look at like kind of on my PC, like my bottom little like taskbar of like all the different icons, it's all because like each one of them is amazing at what they do. And
yeah,
yeah, it's just like it's an easier handoff than trying to like do it all inside this one little package, which could do it like, 50, 60% of the way there, but it's like, unwrapping in cinema was like a headache, so like I got 3D coat or like Rise on UV, and it's like
yeah.
it just fixes that headache and like makes sure that you're
And
not.
yeah, also it's like super expensive to get everything,
Right.
a license for everything. But if you can, like, so you have a subscription for C4D, right? And then you can use C4D, and but you want to be more proficient in, let's say, unwrapping. Then you
Mm-hmm.
buy RISM. RISM isn't that expensive, and you just do it at Black Friday once a year.
Yeah.
Then you buy a new software, and it's okay. And you also
Eventually.
can, most of them you can like rent these days, I
Right.
think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
which I think is a great thing. A long time, everything was like, just a massive price tag that you had to buy perpetually, which people like both ways of that, and you only pay once. But I think it's,
Yeah.
if you want to try
It
stuff out, it's super
it's
easy.
yeah. These days I'm like somewhere in the middle. I like I like rent to own, for example. If I
Mm-hmm.
rent it for like a year, then I own it. It's I think with Risen, it's the way
Yep.
they work, and that's like the best of two worlds for me.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah,
We got people here in the chat asking about real time, like Unreal and Unity. Do you think it will become more important than in a motion design workflow in the future, or do you think it will eventually like real time rendering will overtake cinema or like renderers in general? Because I know you've been playing around inside Unreal, right?
yes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Um, okay, so for now, I don't think that C4D will or any uh, offline rendering. Is it how it's called? Yeah, offline
Yeah.
rendering will have to go for Unreal. I mean, Unreal, it will get better and better, and it's a great software. It's really complex, and you can do tons. I mean, you can do games with it, like
Right.
whole
Yeah.
games. So yeah, it is complex, and yeah, but I think it's still separated from the rendering stuff. They just lend each other feature sets, and
Yeah.
I think that's how it will go for a few more years. And I mean, doing an animated movie is completely different from like making a game, and Unreal is for making games. It's not like, I mean, they will probably dip their toes in workflows that make you able to create also like animated movies, which they already do.
Mm-hmm.
And but I think the main focus for them is creating software that's meant to be used for creating games.
Yeah.
Was that correct English? No, but
I mean, yeah,
yeah,
the idea is, I mean, I think a lot of people look always at that sort of Quixel rebirth project as like, see, it's
yeah,
totally fine. But it's like, I don't think a lot of people understand it's like, it's a lot of it is because those are amazingly detailed scans that are just like scattered everywhere. And then they've added like fog, volumetrics, and things that we think of as expensive in offline rendering
yeah,
but in the way they implement it. But it's like when you go to, move that into like, I tried a couple times with like, I took my render, remade it inside of Unreal and like saw like the different kinks in the workflows. And it's like some things is great, but like glass, you're going to be able to avoid the fact that like a real time render is just not going to do glass well. And like sort of
yeah.
different things like that, where it's just like a headache of like, 90% of this might have been like way faster, but this one pain point is going to make the whole thing like look not as good. And I think that, that's just going to
It's
be the
also with
case.
like when they say, yeah, but we have RTX, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we can have refractions at some point. Well, yeah, but then it's just like another offline renderer.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It just
mean,
goes back to
we
not
have,
real time.
yeah, I mean, we can have like a million layers of like subsurface scattering and glass on top of each other, and it just will render forever. And that's the thing. I don't think RTX is meant for that.
Right.
It's meant for like reflections and, of course, probably at some point refractions and great looking shadows and stuff like that. But always like it's always on a budget and never like, okay, just brute force it until it
Mm-hmm.
looks great. And it's there because they want games to look better, not to run slower.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think at the cutting point where you want to have great looking animations, you won't use Unreal.
Yeah. I
I
mean, I
mean,
think it's a,
still you, yeah, it will shift, and they I think it's really important, and it's a great skill to have to use Unreal and to understand your way around in Unreal, and you will find many, many, many clients for that in the future. And there will be companies that will just grab you off the market if you know your way around in Unreal.
Hmm.
And if you're into that stuff, then do it, but it won't replace any standard 3D package. I mean, you can. I think Unreal is just like the main hub for everything that comes together. It's just
Right.
like still need to model the assets and texture them, and you will need other tools for that,
Yeah.
not just Unreal.
Yeah, I think that's, the case in a lot of things is sort of like, you know, kind of what we were saying is like, you'd have to model it, texture it, make it game
Yes.
ready, and then send it over. Then you can like do whatever and like cool, you could build out a really big scene. But I think a lot of these things where people see like Quixel take their assets and build out a forest in like 15 minutes, it's like, well, yeah, if you have forest assets ready to go. But I
Yeah.
mean, like I could build a forest probably pretty quickly in Cinema if I just had like an asset library to like pull in. It's like, yeah, it's really great at like rendering those in time. But I don't know. I was still doing stuff where I was like, oh, I have to cache all of the lighting and then I can move
Yeah.
around. But I was like, isn't that rendering? Like, aren't I just
Yeah,
technically
that's the thing.
rendering?
I
Yeah.
mean, you have these, what is it called? Um, yeah, the renderer for Unreal, the light mass
Hmm.
renderer, I think it is called. And then the first time I had to build lighting, it took like 15 minutes. I was
Yeah.
like, okay, well, I
It's cool
mean,
that I can, get different angles after this is all done. And like, that's
yeah,
definitely a big improvement. Or you could like animate, like get an animation, whereas, that would have been just one frame. It's like, I get that. That's cool. But I was like, still seems like a little bit of kind of rendered it a little bit. And
yeah,
then I could cache files like in a different thing in the same way. But I think it's definitely good. I think it's at this point something that a lot of people have to stop ignoring because it's like, with Unreal 5 and stuff coming out, it's
yeah,
definitely going to be, a lot more of an ask. And I've been seeing it pop up a lot more too. When like they'll just be like, does anyone happen to know Unreal in this gig? And it's like, oh, that's probably something I should start like digging into more. But
yeah,
I
it's
don't think
for
that,
sure. It
throw
will.
away Cinema or something and just hop into
No.
Unreal.
Yeah. Also, oh no, no, I forgot what I wanted to say. Maybe it comes back. Sorry.
Cool. Um, and then I think, on the rest of the IG questions from the Instagram, someone kind of had an interesting thing, and I don't know if this is something that you think about a lot, but like, how did you get better at the right level of imperfection? Or is there like something that you've done where you like look at photo references? But like, I think that that's, a valid question because, a lot of people, it's sort of to taste, but a lot of it is like, a lot of it goes overhand and like you see like, something looks like it's been there for 1,000 years versus, like maybe just like a year or so in their scenes and it's like everything has rust on it where it shouldn't really be that way. I think that's also a product of substance and they're like cool smart masks kind of just like blast wear
No.
on something and everyone is just like that's cool, yeah, it looks like it's like ancient and you're like, oh, maybe you should tone that back a little bit. But how did you kind of go through that process of finding what like looks right for you?
I don't know. I think I just looked at a lot of images over the years. So I have like Pinterest, which is full
Mm-hmm.
of stuff, and I just looked, and like everything is dusty here. So my desk is dusty. I know how dust looks. I just observed a lot of dust on objects in my time. I mean, just in real life,
Right.
you have like a screen or a microphone. Here's my big, big microphone. Can you see it? No, but it's super dusty, and I don't know. I just get used to that look, and when I do it in 3D, I think, okay, that's dust looks a little bit like a little bit too much like hair, or it's too big, and I dial it down a little bit, then it looks bad from that angle. But
Mm-hmm.
it's just trial and error until it looks good. Also, what I discovered the recent years was that I really like um, photo artifacts like noise and grain. Just like if you take a picture with an analog camera.
Hmm.
Also chromatic aberration, all that stuff. I'm really a sucker for these things, and I just love looking at bad developed photos with like blurry edges and
Yeah.
yeah, it's just my thing. Also, I have like a friend, Alex. Hi, Alex, if you see that. His name's Alex Rich from Germany too. He's just like she's like not she. He's like a camera guy that is also very good at 3D.
Mm.
And he sent me settings for the Octane Universal camera, and I just applied into my camera, and everything looks so good now. And he was like, "Do you mind?" He was like, "Yeah, yeah, I played around with it, and now it looks like an anamorphic camera." And I was like, "Yeah, cool." Just copied it, and it's so good. And yeah, I just love that stuff. So I think it's like a combination of like observing surfaces and being interested in surfaces. And I always had like these conversations with Raphael as well.
Hmm.
When you're like a 3D artist and you're like your first year using V-Ray, and you like read a lot of stuff about physics and so how surfaces behave with the
Hmm.
energy transport and everything. And Raphael is like an expert on that,
Right.
and at least in for me he is. And then you go through the world and you observe these things differently. So you see like a surface in the on the train or on the tram on your way to work, or and you say, oh, that's really worn down. I bet a lot of people have touched it that way, or
Hmm.
I don't know, that there's like a certain way the light reflects, and then you think about how you would achieve that um, in 3D. And we always had these things with anisotropic reflections.
Yep.
If you have like these, like on the back of a CD or
Hmm.
a vinyl, and you can see like these stretched reflections of things. And whenever we saw that in like real life, we were all like, "Oh, oh, look at these anisotropic
Yeah.
reflections." It was like, "Ah," and yeah, you just change the way you observe things around you, and I think that's a common thing for 3D artists. And I think that everyone who does 3D should anticipate that and appreciate it and do that and observe your environment. And then you will, at some point, if you I mean, you can also use tons of reference, right? But
Hmm.
I don't know. For me, it's like a mix of everything: observation of my surroundings, references, and taste.
Right. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that, yeah, I don't know really how to shut it off, but like in my brain, yeah, whenever like walking around or something, you're just like, yeah, that's doing that because I bet like, the this and that in the material would cause that. And or like I think the biggest breakthrough for me was just when someone explained to me like IOR doesn't have to just be 1.3. Like you can make it other things and materials have different properties, and that's kind of where I was like, oh yeah, I should probably, cuz like your scene just kind of looks the same. Like if you just have like everything kind of set at that, like it just all muddies into the same values. And if you
yeah,
kind of like, that's like I think where I started was like, oh yeah, plastic should be up to 1.4, and then the glass for this thing should be 2 point this, and like there's a whole index that you can go through. But I mean, starting there and then beyond that is all the different kind of scratches that things should have, or like the bump
yeah,
on something, like it's actually bump that's doing it, it's not actually rough, it is plastic, but like the bump makes it look. I mean, Raphael has 1,000 talks that people can look up where he
yeah.
explains this in much better words with his actual science behind
It,
it. But it's something that not everyone has to go into. I mean, it's very much a stylistic choice. But if you're looking to add sort of those details, I think that that's a good place for a lot of people to start. It's just like, real world photo reference on top of, how to convert those into your material is,
yeah, it gets really crazy when you start with metal and
yeah,
just the science behind metal.
right.
You think just, okay, metal is just IOR up to
Mm-hmm.
8. It's not. It's just metal is very unreal
Right.
compared to plastic,
Yeah.
because yeah, it's like when I heard the first time, it has like a diffuse amount. Like in real life, it's like 100% reflection or refraction,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, what? And yeah, and then there comes this it was refract no extinction coefficient stuff. And you back in the day you had to, because now we have like the metallic shading model in Octane. It's
Mm-hmm.
really easy to replicate it, but back in the day you had to like build your own Fresnel curve with V-Ray and like without nodes.
Yeah.
It was super fucked up.
Yeah.
But
Just like
yeah,
stacks of, I just remember, yeah, layers and layers where you like would dig out
yeah,
of it and you're like, oh, right. That's like, you had no concept of like how it was
no,
laid
it
out. You
was
just
super
like knew that you had to
abstract.
just keep going inside like these little containers and you're like, oh, once I dig out
Yeah.
of this. I mean, I used Octane without the node editor for like the longest time just so I was used to that and I could build like things really quickly because they would just automatically nest. And then, I finally switched over to nodes because I would open my node editor and it would just be all stacked on top of each other in one big clump. And I was like, oh, I should clean this up and probably
Yes.
just work in the node editor
Yeah.
from now on. But yeah, I think that that's probably a good thing for a lot of people if you're looking to do that. And then it's also just taste. I mean, I think that's the biggest takeaway. Like you're an artist, so like obviously take the real world into account and then tweak it to
I
like
mean, if you want to do stuff that looks like the real world, you
right.
can always bend these rules, right? And
Mm-hmm.
there's like many people who aren't interested in doing stuff that looks photoreal and aren't interested in spending hours on the physics of it, and
Yep.
that's fine. You can do whatever and do stylized stuff, but there are a lot of people who are into that and find that interesting, and I mean, it's like a part of the hobby, right? And
Yep.
yeah, then observe your surroundings.
um, cool. So with that, what is kind of Everest project for you? That's like your main big dream project. I know there was a while back I saw in like some of your renders there was like a plea for Blizzard to hire you as like an
Oh no, that
artist.
was
Was that your dream
oh yeah.
project for a while?
Oh yes, like oh yeah, yeah. No, that was different. That was a different plea for a different company. But
Oh,
no, it was Blizzard.
right.
Like, but then there was another company I had like contact with. So yes, like for a very long time. Um, okay, how do I say that? Um, So when I left school, I was really young. I thought, okay, working for Blizzard or working for any big name company will be the dream and it
Mm-hmm.
will be amazing. And it's completely different to working for a small company. And I discovered over the years that does the name and how big everything is, that really doesn't matter because you can have a shit job at a big company and you can have a shit job at a small company, and
Right.
it's like the work environment, right? So if you work at a no-name company for clients nobody knows, it can be as great as working for a big ass company working on Overwatch or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So that changed. So I'm not like um, I'm more interested in the terms I work and the people I work with. So if the team is great and I have great colleagues and they're all nice and I get along with them and the I get paid enough and I don't crunch without pay, and I think that these days that's more important for me. That's the most important thing. I don't care if I work for like a small shop around the corner and it's not like big names attached to my portfolio, because I did all the big name stuff already. I worked for BMW at work. I worked for NASA. I worked for Adobe recently. And while they're all great, um, there can also be like smaller companies that can also like be great.
Mm-hmm.
And for example, working for NASA felt like it was a tiny project. It felt super small
Mm.
because it was just the name NASA written on it, and it was like, oh, now it's a big thing. And I also had like jobs that were like for a local company that were a nightmare, and it's just and the other way around. And
Yep.
so it's the Everest project for me is where I have tons of freedom. So like a lot of freedom they let me do, they trust me with that, and it's also like a project that fits to me.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes I used to get hired for stuff that wasn't like really on my yard.
Yeah.
So like make like a super designy, not dirty, not grungy at all thing. And it's not like my competence lies in the things like super complex scenes with lots of dirty assets, and just leave me lots of time for it and it will be great. That's my thing. I'm a specialist for that, right? And if I get hired for doing stuff out of my comfort zone, that's cool for learning, and it's an opportunity, and it's good to discover things, but it's not an Everest project. It's just like, yeah, I think the Everest project is something in deep in my comfort zone
Right.
with lots of time attached to it, and that can be anything.
Would you want to go into like animated versions of your stuff, like longer form, or just like a big scene?
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, I would love to do an animated short one day. That's all. I always say that, and I never did it so far. It's really scary
Right.
to like. I mean, it's like a big commitment. You know, you will. I mean, I know if I start an animated short and let's say 3 minutes, pure animation would take me years to
Right.
finish that. And I would need like people I trust. Then I have the problem how I would love to pay these people, because they do their work for me or for a project that was my idea. I would love to pay them, but I can't. How do I do
Mm-hmm.
that? And that's like tons of things attached to that idea of doing an animated short. Um, yeah, so that's still a thing that I will do one day, I hope. But I don't know how or what it will be, but I would love to do that at some point. I mean, I have friends who said, "Okay, well, when you do it, I will help you." And I mean, I've tons of friends who always wanted to help me and always helped me with stuff, but still, it's that would be a major thing for me. And yeah, at some point, maybe that's the Everest project. Maybe
Yeah.
that's the thing, the animated short, the 3 minute animated short. I mean, I know from Ash, you know Ash Thorpe, who
Mm-hmm.
is a friend of ours, and he the Awaken Akira short. This was just like 1 minute, and he worked a whole year on that. It's
Yep.
1 minute animation, and it's yeah. And if you want to do 3 minutes, or I mean, there's like animated shots that go 10 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like, how do you do that? I mean, it always depends on how it looks in the end and how much stuff you want to do. And, but yeah, it's complicated stuff.
Yep. That would be cool though. I mean, it would just be interesting to see your stuff in motion with like the style and detail. I think that like a lot of stuff because of that hurdle kind of gets reined back in when things go to animation. So it'd be a very interesting to see how that converts over. Um,
Yeah.
is there? You said there's a project that you're working on that people can look forward to, but it's a long ways out because it's a big another. It's your biggest scene. Anything
Yes.
on that that you want to talk about, or is it a big secret that you're just gonna drop?
So, no, I talked to a lot of people already about the idea. It will be a LAN party, a big LAN party,
Hmm.
a scene with like 50 computers in it and all cabled, and um, so I can tell you that there's also like work in progress shots. I can show them to you later if you want. But yeah, that's the thing. I teased that in the work with the astronaut 6088 AD, where he's in the alleyway with the orange and blue buildings,
Mm-hmm.
and on one wall um, there's like the names of all the artwork I did, and the last one is 2003, and that's the project 2003. That's the working title for it, and 2003 is the year I started doing 3D,
Mm-hmm.
not 3D, doing digital art.
Yep.
And so that's on a LAN party. So that's the
Mm-hmm.
way back. That's the full circle. Also, like the first big detailed artwork I did in, I think the very first one of them was in 2011. And it's also a picture of a LAN party.
Right.
So I'm closing the circle with this one. And yeah, when
Sounds
that's
like
sold,
a
I can finish it. Yeah,
yeah.
it's oh God, I'm doing I plan it for like 3 or 4 years now, and I have like never started because I was too afraid, and I thought, okay, maybe I learn Redshift for that, or maybe I just do Arnold, and I was like, Raphael told me, yeah, but Arnold takes a long time to render. I was
Hmm.
like, yeah, but is it so bad? And he was like, yeah, I mean, I don't know how much time you have, and
Yeah.
because it's always like a technical limitation. Everything has to fit into the VRAM. I have now 2080 Ti's, three of them, and no, four of them, and then one 1080 Ti, and it all has to fit in 11 gigabytes of VRAM, the whole scene. And this is complicated stuff, so I
Right.
don't know.
Yeah, I wonder
Maybe I have
if
to
the
switch
battle is just
engines.
because it gets pulled to the lowest VRAM card, right? And so your
Yeah.
1080 is like
Yeah, I
bottlenecking
mean,
everybody.
no, the 2080 Ti is 11 gigabytes and the 1080 Ti is also 11. So,
Oh, they're
yeah,
the same. I'm thinking of a
yeah,
30, an elusive 3080 or 3090. Whenever people can
yeah.
actually get those.
There was this rumor about a 3080 Ti at some point that has like 16 gigabytes of RAM. Even that would help. I mean, the 3090 would be totally cool with, I think, 20, 24.
I think it's 24, right?
Yeah, 24, that
Yeah.
would be amazing, but I don't got money for that. No,
Yeah.
I just moved. I spent like, I don't know, thousands of euros for new furniture
Yeah.
and a kitchen and everything. So, no, no way for me to do that. And also, it's like people say, yeah, but you can use Octane Render Cloud and stuff. I mean, yeah, sure for the final, but I have still have to work on it.
Right. Yeah. To
Like
see how it's
on,
going along.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I can't like shade it and put textures on it without having the hardware here at home.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
How is I think this will be kind of the last topic we touch on, but it's the most recent for you. You've moved into the fun little up and coming space of crypto art with your stuff.
Yeah, I
How
think
have you
I'm
found
annoying
that?
people already on Twitter because it's all I post about. Um, yeah, it's the people are great. I still don't get it really.
Right.
It's like super confusing because there's like so it's always the same reaction when I tell some people, okay, there's like a blockchain and there's people putting images into the blockchain, and then it's all of a sudden not shit anymore and worth a ton because it's just one time in that blockchain. So you have like it's like you make it rare.
Right.
And people are like, so, but you can't just take a screenshot and print it out. And I was like, yeah, technically you could, but
Right.
in the blockchain, it's like you have it like on paper that it's yours and
Yeah.
stuff like that. And they're like, ah, okay. And then who pays for that? That's always the question. And that I can't answer because I don't know who pays for that and why. I think it's like a gamble. It's like investors that have tons of money, maybe. And then I tell them, okay, there's like people who made like 20K on one thing. I mean, that's like
Hmm.
special people who are around for a long time, probably, but it's still like mind blowing to me. And I haven't sold anything yet. So, yeah, I mean, I talk to people, and there's like people who are interested, but I think I will start selling things next year. Yeah. So I'm active on a platform. It's called Super Rare, and you have pretty much to you have to accept the bids. And I told some people, yeah, next year, early next year in January, I will accept bids, and yeah, because for tax reasons, I don't want to do it at the end of the year, and it
Right.
was a pretty bad year anyway. So yeah,
Yeah. I mean that's probably I don't know about these investors, but if you can keep all of it in Ethereum and never convert it into your money, then it's probably what their plan is because you if they buy a piece on crypto art and then it gets sold, they get a little bit from that sell every time it goes on. So it's kind of more of an investment, but it is quite insane to see like the vast like number differences of like these things that people were kind of just sharing out on their Instagram are now like going back through this chain of like being authenticated and then going out for like thousands of what are dollars but isn't crypto. It's an interesting space which is quickly rising because everyone's like, oh, I have renders that I could get through this thing and start
I
sharing.
already had like bits for 4 Ethereum, which
Hmm.
is like over 1,000. I mean, no, it's way more than thousands, like 2,000, $3,000.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Crazy. But then there's like people telling me, oh, you will do so good on crypto. Everyone knows you on Instagram, and you're like famous in the 3D scene. You will get millionaire. You will be rich. You never have to work again. And I was like, yeah, sure. And then, yeah, I don't know. It's just like I'm a little skeptic still, but I think the community is great. Everyone is welcoming. They're all on the same page and want to support artists. I also hear a lot of people that are annoyed by this whole crypto thing exploding right now on Twitter, but
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, I think, in a bubble, which is why so many people are flooding over to try to get into it before like that pops and people stop investing so much and it gets oversaturated. But I think it's artists getting paid for their work is never a bad thing, even if people are getting a
Exactly.
little bit annoyed about how markety it is right now, and how all of your Instagram and Twitter feeds are just people selling renders and stuff. But I think it's a cool space, and it's cool to see people kind of at like the level that you do work, and other people kind of going in, because there's a
Yeah.
it has some like crypto art is kind of daily art, like a lot of people have been saying. But I think it's cool that other people are putting out original pieces for crypto only that are never been anywhere else, but then also people that are kind of taking their huge nice big stills like
That I
you.
will try as well soon, like making something only for crypto art platforms. Uh, you applied to Super Rare as well, right?
Not
Did
a cool kid, not cool enough to get through though, but yeah.
but are you at Nifty right now, or did you go to another platform?
No, I put a pin in it because then a lot of my like other stuff ramped
Ah,
up, and I want to, like, if I do it, like make very specific things for it, that I had plans for. But then there were so many different places. I've like signed up on places, but I haven't like signed up to become an artist on places so that I could like follow friends and bid on stuff. But yeah, it's a cool space. It'll be interesting to see like next year this time where it's kind of landed at, with all the new artists that are flooding into it and stuff. Um,
yes, I'm very curious.
Cool. Well, I think that that's probably a good wrap up for us. Thank you so much for doing this.
No
Had a
problem.
lot of people that were saying this was a cool talk in the chat, and that they're excited to see this. This will be up on YouTube for everyone. If you want to go back through this and watch it again, or if you didn't catch it live, it'll be up there. Thank you for coming on, and thank you everyone for stopping by. See ya.
Bye bye.